Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach, and today we have with us Mark MacDonald, who's the President of Advanced Wealth Preservation, and today we're going to be talking about Social Security claiming strategies. Mark, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. Pleasure being here.
Hey, so I want to jump right into this topic because I know it is timely and people need to hear about it even though they think it's way, way in the future. But give us a little bit of background on yourself and what led you to the financial services industry.
Great. Love to, Mike. Thank you. So I grew up in kind of early in my career in magazine publishing and was fortunate to work for two great organizations, financial organizations. One was U.S. News and World Report, and at the time, we had started creating great financial guides. Most people are familiar with America's Best Colleges Guide and America's Best Places to Retire. And if you look at U.S. News today, it's one of the really great financial websites today. I then moved on and ran the publishing group for Individual Investor Group, which was founded by Jonathan Steinberg, who is today the owner and founder of Wisdom Tree, a $42 billion asset company. So long way of saying I was blessed along the way to not only be in publishing, but financial publishing, which led by passion and interest to transition over and be able to take a lot of the information I'd learned and help people and serve people every day. And the last third of their life, which is retirement. And there was great need and interest and not a lot of information to help people in retirement planning, and we thought that would be a great place to start and help people.
Yeah, I guess with that background in journalism and more specifically financial topics, that led you right into, well, may as well start helping people with this more than just the information side of things. So what do you find working with clients and in your journalism background, what do you find is the limiting factor why people don't address dealing with retirement earlier than they do? Because I suspect, I don't know that they're an exact number, but I suspect that people know they should deal with it and think about it and start making strides toward planning for retirement, but it just doesn't come until, maybe later in the process than it could, and maybe they could have made some financial moves earlier.
It's a great question, Mike. I think most people think of retirement and they start planning early when, they start setting up 401k accounts at work. And I think many people start in their 20s and 30s saving for retirement. And of course, as you said, it seems like it's a long way off. The thing I always remind people is that when we're working, even though we're stressed and everybody has, has varying degrees of stress in their job, life is relatively simple in the sense that we have one paycheck and we have one healthcare provider. But what happens is when we retire, most people have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different paychecks coming in. Social Security being one, which we'll talk about today. And most people transition from one healthcare plan to about 5, 6, or 7 different healthcare plans. So I'll give you an example. I have 6 different healthcare plans that replaces my company plan.
Wow.
So it's really, retirement there's a lot of moving parts and it's complicated. And we really move from one paycheck and one healthcare provider to multiple income streams and multiple healthcare providers.
So I've never heard it phrased just that way, but it makes sense. And I don't know the bullet points of how many, tell me about all of the plans. And I'm sure we'll get into some of that, but it kind of makes me think of from the 30,000 foot view. This is not just a quick Google search and, here's the answer to this question and let's move on. You really can't figure all that stuff out on your own, I would suspect, right?
No, you're absolutely correct, and I've been able to, blessed to be able to help thousands of people, and there's just, Social Security today, which is the topic we're going to talk about. 80% of Americans underclaim their Social Security income in retirement, and what we mean by that is when we run special reports and we ask people, when do you plan to start your Social Security check? We've got software that'll optimize their benefits And often we can find an additional $250,000, $300,000 of additional Social Security income that they can receive in retirement based on their claiming and timing strategies. So to your point, it's not something that you can Google. You actually need software to do that. I'm actually certified in Social Security, and so we're able to do this for people. But it's nobody's fault that 80% of Americans underclaim their benefits, because there's 567 different ways between age 62 and 70 to claim your benefits. Wow. And depending on whether you're single, married, divorced, or widowed, there's a lot of rules within Social Security that affect how much money you'll receive.
So I think that people hear the word Social Security and they think, well, if I can get it, I hear all these rumors that it's going away one day. But in reality, those rumors have been around for 2 or 3 decades. So that might just be, let's just leave that in the rumor mill where it belongs. But the point is, I think a lot of people feel like, man, my world is going to change when I retire. So as soon as I can claim, give it to me now, because I just want it now, and sooner is better than later. What's the fallacy in that thinking?
Well, you brought up 2 really great points, Mike. One is 50% of Americans claim Social Security before their full retirement age. So that's number one. Many of whom claim and don't know the information that we're going to talk about today, and don't realize that by claiming early, that they're leaving a lot of money on the table, that they without paying any more money into the system, they can actually, maximize and get a lot more Social Security in retirement. So that's kind of part one. Number 2 is that Social Security, I like to say Social Security today is broken, but it's not broke. And the distinction I make on that is today, actually, there's $2.9 trillion surplus in the Social Security Retirement Trust Fund. So think about that. There's almost $3 trillion surplus. But what's happened is a couple of years ago, Social Security started paying more benefits out to retirees than it was collecting in Social Security payroll taxes. It's projected by 2035, Social Security, that trust fund, will go broke. And if Congress doesn't fix it by 2035, and this is pre-COVID, by the way, and I'll come back to that in a second, but basically in 14 years, that surplus is going to be wiped out. And if the government doesn't fix it, everybody's going to have to take a 21% pay cut on Social Security, current retirees as well as future retirees. So nobody really wants that to happen, but we're still at the whim of Congress in terms of how and when they fix it.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, many people, 50% or 50-some% of people take the benefits as soon as possible. Is there, and I'm assuming there is, a benefit for delaying your claiming a little bit? What does that look like as a broad stroke?
Great question. Most people, well, I can just say everybody today who's listening and everybody in America, you should fully understand what your full retirement age is. Not the age you retire, but what is your full retirement age in the eyes of Social Security. In 1935, when FDR and Congress passed Social Security, it was quite simple back then. Everybody's Social Security full retirement age was 65. Today, for everybody, it's between the ages of 66 and 67. For those people that claim early or start before full retirement age, there's 2 penalties. One is a permanent reduction in your benefit, and the other is what's called the earnings test, which means if you work a little bit more than part-time and earn more than $19,000 a year, and you collect Social Security, they'll withhold your benefit, and you won't get it until you either stop working or your full retirement age. To the second point you made, Mike, which is great, which is while there's penalties for claiming Social Security before your full retirement age, there's rewards for turning on Social Security or claiming Social Security after your full retirement age. Every year that you delay or wait to collect your Social Security or start your Social Security income, you get an 8% increase plus cost of living adjustment. So, for example, if somebody was full retirement age was 66, by waiting from 66 to 70, they've given themselves a 32% pay increase plus cost of living along the way. So if you average, let's say, 2%, I always like to say to people, imagine you could walk into your boss when you're working and say, look, I'm going to negotiate my contract, my employment contract for the next 4 years. And here's what it's going to look like. For the next 4 years, you're going to give me a salary increase of 8% plus cost of living adjustment. Well, most of us know, okay, in our careers, we'd never be able to go into our bosses and do that. But when it comes to Social Security, we can have that conversation with ourselves and do that. So again, between 66 and 70, you get an 8% annual increase plus cost of living adjustment, which recently has been almost 40% pay increase by waiting 4 years. So again, I'm not recommending this, but these are things that people are not aware of, and often people will find this out after they've claimed and go, "Oh my goodness, I wish I knew that before I claimed."
And in some cases, you don't have a choice. Like for instance, you run the numbers and you've retired in it, and you cannot wait. I mean, you literally can't survive, pay the bills, put food on the table if you waited. So that's not to say that it's a horrible decision to claim at a certain age. It's just that is a wonderful opportunity to consider.
Absolutely. And again, 50% of Americans claim Social Security before their full retirement age. Why? The majority of them need to. They retire, they're no longer collecting a paycheck, they've got to pay their bills. And quite candidly, that's why FDR and Congress set up Social Security was, at the age of, even a few years before traditional retirement age of 65. If you retire early and you need to pay bills, that's what it's there for. So you're absolutely correct. It's there. And so again, for a large number of Americans, it's not an option, and that's why it's there, and that's why you're paying into it. And it serves a really great purpose to help pay a lot of your bills in retirement. For other Americans, you have choices. So part of it is that we'd go through an analysis to see, one, at what age do you need Social Security income, and two, do you have the options to sort of get these sort of rewards by waiting.
So what are you finding that when people come to you and say, okay, well, it sounds to me like I can either take it now or wait. Okay, that's wonderful, but what about those 567 different choices I have? What are some of the other common things to keep in mind when making these claiming decisions?
Yeah, great. Another great question. So really the great thing is that we have software that runs custom reports, and really, you want to. Everybody's in their own unique situation when it comes to retirement. So, meaning that you're either single going into retirement when you're thinking about Social Security, you're married, you're divorced, or you're widowed. Okay, they're all different Social Security rules and combinations and factors that come into play based on what your life situation is when you claim Social Security. So most people tend to think of Social Security in, I always say, with a set of glasses. They look at it one-dimensionally. But if you're married, if you're divorced, or if you're widowed, I always say you have to take your glasses off and put on 3D glasses, because Social Security is much more complex. And what I mean by that is, if you think about, most people tend to think about, well, I can collect Social Security as early as age 62, but if I wait to 66, I've just given up 4 years of potential income that I could have collected, right, between 62 and 66. So the thing that you want to look at is what's called the break-even point, which means at what point in the future, if you don't take Social Security at 62, do you make up for any checks that you did not collect starting at age 62? And then how much additional money do you make for the rest of your retirement years? So that is called the break-even point. And a lot of people I talk to are familiar with that, but they look at it in a linear, they only look at it in the sense that they look at their benefit. If you're married, divorced, or widowed, it's much more complicated to calculate the break-even point. So simply stated, when people are thinking about waiting to take Social Security, most people kind of in the back of their mind know, well, geez, I can't take it at 62, but if I wait to 66 and I could collect $25,000 a year beginning at 62, I've just given up $100,000 of potential checks. But at some point in the future, and again, we have software that runs this, and again, it runs for whatever life situation you're in. It's going to show you the break-even point, at which point you make up for that $100,000 you did not collect, and how much additional Social Security income you'll make till the end of your life. So they're really valuable reports. And I always say thank goodness for software, because I was teaching a course one time at Drew University down the road here, and I had 100 people in front. I've done thousands of these, and I said, there's 567 different combinations to choose Social Security. 80% of Americans, get it wrong. Who in the world would ever want to, calculate that by hand? Thank goodness for computers. And there was this one gentleman in the front rows raised his hand. I said, "Sir, do you mind if I ask what you do for a living?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm a PhD mathematician." So I said, "Okay."
There's always that guy.
There's always that guy. So I always say now at my seminars, I always say, short of being a PhD mathematician, where your hobby and interest is algorithmic calculation.
Yep. And you could pretty much do it in your head, and it just, I remember in college, my college algebra teacher, which I just despised math and everything, he came in one day, it was kind of nonchalant, and he's like, last night I had a nice night, I sat down and read through the textbook. And he spoke of it like just passionately read it like a novel, and I'm like, what a different mind that is. But yeah, you're right. Is technology is great, but here's something that I would even maybe we'll close with this thought. Technology is really, really wonderful and great, but you need to know how to use it. So, for instance, you could send me the login password for that, and I wouldn't have a clue what to do. And I think that's the difference between just some generic person that says, yeah, I know how to do financial type things, or I can help you with a whole litany of financial products. But unless you really are dialed into Social Security claiming strategies and maybe have this software or certification or really that dialed in approach, you really still could be leaving things at the table. So wrap up with the benefit of having that person like yourself that specializes in Social Security to wring out every piece of benefit. And then what's the best way that people can reach out and connect with you and learn more, Mark?
Great. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, absolutely great last point you made. And as all of us know, technology is a tool, but it's a means to an end. And I don't think you can ever replace kind of human thinking and filter. And, if we think about it, this is important. I take it very serious, and we take very serious. We're helping people create a risk-free, bulletproof, comprehensive retirement plan where they can live the retirement of their dreams and, avoid major potential disasters along the way. But the foundation of retirement income planning begins with Social Security, and there's just a lot of moving parts. The simplest way to say it is that Social Security was very simple when FDR passed, as I mentioned, back in Congress back in 1935. But there's 1,800 rules that now govern it. There's been 58 major congressional changes to Social Security, most of them negative, not all of them. But many of them have changed. The most recent has been in 2016, so you always have legislative changes, and I think most people are aware of that. So, again, the software that we have that helps people, see how they can get the most Social Security income in their retirement without paying any more in. There's a software tool that we use to help people do that. But again, it's all part of more comprehensive planning, which is what other income and assets do you have? Do you have a pension? When do you plan to stop working? When do you stop paying into accounts and start taking money out of accounts? So there's a lot of moving parts. But again, the most important thing is that we found out really early in our process that for most Americans and for most people listening on your show today, if they live to life expectancy, Social Security will be a $1 million plus retirement asset for them. So I always say to people, if you had $1 million in your 401k plan, would you pay attention to it? And everybody says, yeah, I pay a lot of attention to it. Well, Social Security can be a $1 to $1.5, $1.8 million, depending on how long you live and how much you paid in. We've seen situations where it's a $1.5, $1.6 million retirement asset. So like most things with that sort of gravitas, you want to pay attention to it. And we've made a career of helping people understand and how to maximize their benefits. But thank you for asking, Mike. It was a great question. If people would like more information, you can reach out to me at Mark, M-A-R-K, at ADVWP, AppleDavidVictoryWP.com.
Well, Mark, thanks so much for coming on. I can tell you know a thing or two about this, so it's really great sharing that knowledge, and I really appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, it's been a pleasure being on your show.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.